Okay, so this is me. So again, in addition to being the owner of QuickBooks the owner of the CPA firm here in Atlanta, and I have clients pretty much all over the country at this point, I also own QuickBooks Made Easy. And what we do is we're all about teaching people how to use QuickBooks, both accountants and end users. And we do seminars, we do webinars, and then I also have training products that we use to teach people with. That bottom little point here says that I am sometimes obnoxious, which is interesting. I'm not sure that I put that there. All right. So somebody else must have put that there. All right, so one of the products that we have is QuickBooks Payroll, and this is basically a soup to nuts training product that teaches you how to use QuickBooks Desktop Payroll. These are all the topics that are in it, and I actually recorded it and worked on it with Dawn Brolin, who is also on the line now, and she's going to be available to answer some questions at the end. If you've not heard of Dawn Brolin, she's a CPA. She's also amazing. I love Dawn. And so anyway, this product is about 5 hours long. It's a DVD. It comes along with a handbook, and it teaches you soup to nuts about doing payroll in desktop QuickBooks. So what we're going to do today, because, you know, Hector kind of twisted my arm, it's tough to talk about payroll in 40 minutes. You know, there's all kinds of stuff that we could talk about. So I just kind of culled out what I think are the most important things that are some stuff that's basic and some stuff that's advanced. I'm going to try and make everybody happy here. All right, so the next thing that I want to cover is the best time to start payroll in QuickBooks. And this is a fairly obvious answer. The best time to start using one of the QuickBooks payroll services as opposed to some other service is going to be January the 1st, right? Because if you do it at some point during the middle of the year, then you need to tell the QuickBooks payroll screens what the payroll that's already been paid, so that the W-2s at the end of the year will have the whole year and not just the wages paid after you switch. You got to enter the year-to-date amounts. And that's a pretty basic thing to understand, and this is something where we get a lot of questions. Where do you go to do that? All right. So again, this is what we're going to be showing you for the rest of this webinar is the enhanced payroll product that's in the desktop, all right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the desktop here, and I'm going to show you where to go to enter the year-to-date amounts, because I get a lot of questions about this. So when you first go to set up payroll, there is a little interview that you go through. I call it a little interview. It's actually pretty big. And you can, some people go in, you don't have to finish the interview. You can go back later, but it's in this little area called payroll setup. And the reason why I'm pointing this out here is because many times people will sign up for payroll, they'll immediately start running paychecks, and then they're like, oh, wait a second, I got to enter the year-to-date amount. So even if you've already entered paychecks, you can go back in and enter the year-to-date amounts. Now, that's not advised because it may calculate state and federal unemployment incorrectly because it doesn't know you've already paid it. It's better to enter the year-to-date amounts on the front end, but I'm just kind of showing you that here's where you go to get to it. So I'm going to go to Employees, Payroll Setup, and it gets you to this interview that you walk through when you're first setting up payroll for the desktop. And it's all these different sections. If you go to Section 5, Year-to-Date Payrolls, this is where you go to enter the payroll that's already occurred, okay? So to do that, I'm going to click Payroll Summary right there, okay? And here's where you enter the paychecks. Now, I like to get into the weeds a little bit, so I'm going to give you a couple of tips. I know there's some people that are kind of advanced, so I'm going to click this Edit to show you the screen where you literally enter it. Now, what I want to explain to you is the reason why well, let me start this way. QuickBooks, there's really two pieces of QuickBooks. There's the main set of books where your chart of accounts is and where your financials are. Then there is the side set of books where the payroll is if you're using the payroll service in the desktop. So what I mean to say here is when you enter your payroll in here and you pick an employee and you enter the pay that's occurred so far, it only affects a little payroll set of books, the one that computes the W-2s and stuff so that the year-to-date will be correct. But it doesn't subtract the money from your bank account. It doesn't affect the general ledger, the main set of books. It just affects the little payroll reports and stuff, all right? So now, having said that, what you'll notice here, there is a row where you enter the pay information. And it looks like they're asking you to enter every single paycheck that has happened. Now, that's a lot. And I've seen some people do it, but you don't necessarily have to do it. You can enter it in lump form. What I would advise is I enter it by the quarter so that QuickBooks will have the information correct for the quarter. So I'm going to click March, and then I'll put the end of quarter in the very last row in March, okay? Now, you may want to do it by month, but I would say either do it by month or by quarter. Again, you still have to do it for each employee, obviously, but that would certainly make it a little bit easier. Just do one entry for all the paychecks, all right? Now, when you do that, again, it doesn't affect the chart of accounts. All it does is tell QuickBooks, hey, there's payroll that's already occurred, so it updates the W-2 and the year-to-date field on the pay stubs will be right, okay? Now, what it also does is it also says, well, wait a second. If you've already paid paychecks, there's withholding on those paychecks. Oh my gosh, you must owe those tax payments. And so you also need to tell QuickBooks about any tax payments that you have paid. So you click Edit, and this is where you go to do that. And then there are other things that are withheld from a check. One of them we're going to talk about in a little bit. It's called health insurance. We all have heard of that. And if you have that withheld from a check and you put that in that first window for paychecks, then it'll think that's owed as well. And so that's what the non-tax payments section is, to enter those payments. All right. So that's where you go to enter the year-to-date amounts. So I thought I would just kind of throw that stuff in there. Let me get out of here now, and I'll go back in to my slides. So that's the best time to start using QuickBooks Payroll, and there's year-to-date. All right. So now the rest of what we're going to cover for the remaining time is we're going to take a couple of things from setup, a couple of things from running payroll, then we'll real quickly look at the W-2s and the W-3s. So some of this stuff is going to be basic, some of this stuff is going to be advanced because I'm trying to make everybody happy, all right? So as far as setting up goes, the process of setting up payroll in QuickBooks is quite a voluminous one. Now, that's one of the reasons why we have the training product, because it helps guide you through the process. There's that payroll setup interview QuickBooks Desktop has, but still, there's a lot that goes into it. So for those of you that are kind of brand new, you don't know much about this, I thought I would just kind of lay it out for you. So the first step in the process after you've chosen your service is really to select the payroll preferences. These are little features that will basically control, for instance, what appears on a person's pay stub would be an example. So I have a couple of preferences that are pretty important that are advanced, and I'm going to point those out in a minute, okay? Then you need to create your accounts. I'm talking about the payroll liability accounts. There's an account in all QuickBooks Desktop files that you automatically get. It's called Payroll Expenses. I don't like that account, okay? I want you to actually change that to salaries and wages and then create an additional one for payroll taxes. If you don't do that, all your payroll will be lumped in payroll expenses. I don't really like that, okay? Then this is probably the most important part of setting up payroll, creating your payroll items. Think of these as the building blocks of your payroll. If you think about a paycheck and the lines that are on the paycheck, gross minus federal, minus Social Security, minus health insurance, all of those things, all those lines, they have to be put in QuickBooks in the payroll item list and added to the employee so that the paycheck will be computed correctly. But there are other things that aren't deducted from the person's check that are payroll items as well. These are things that are computed based on payroll, but the employer pays it. For instance, perhaps a 401k matching share or federal unemployment and state unemployment. These are things that you pay. They're computed based on payroll, so you need payroll items for those as well. Building blocks of the payroll. We're going to do one for health insurance, okay? After that, you want to create your payroll schedules. This allows QuickBooks to tell you when it's time to do payroll and when it's time to pay your liabilities, both taxes and otherwise. Of course, you got to enter your employees, put how much their salaries are going to be, what their withholdings are going to be, that kind of stuff. Enter year-to-date amounts. We already looked at that, and then checking things over. So this is just kind of like a summary of all the setup process, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the QuickBooks Desktop, and let me just open up the home page. All right, and when you go to set up QuickBooks, go to employees, you go through this payroll setup, it is going to walk through some of these steps for you. One of them in particular, which is the most important, is it's going to help you create your payroll items. However, after you're done with the interview, you don't usually ever go back to it. So I wanted to show you where to go to add additional payroll items for new things that occur. Perhaps somebody has a garnishment coming out of their check, or you didn't used to have health insurance being offered, and now because of the Affordable Health Care you do. How do you enter that stuff? All right, so I'm going to go under lists. Do you like the way I was real timely with that because of the Affordable Health Care? I'm pretty proud of myself, Hector. All right, so we're going to go to, thank you. Hopefully other people are listening. You really should. I'm an extremely interesting individual. All right, so here's the payroll item list. This is where the building blocks are of your payroll, and this is different from the regular item list that you see in QuickBooks. It's called the payroll item list. All right, so here it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a couple of them related to health insurance. Now, many clients pay health insurance for their employees. Now, some of them, your client pays 100% of the health insurance for the employee. That doesn't happen that much. Some of them, the employee pays 100% of the health insurance. That happens more. But usually what I see is the employer pays part and the employee pays part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to create payroll items. The first one that I'm going to show you is called Health Insurance Employee. And this is the one that will compute the amount to be deducted from the check. And then this other one here is the employer portion. That's the portion that the employer pays. All right? So we're going to show you that in a second. Just first, I want to tell you, anytime you go to create a payroll item, you go to the payroll item list, you go to the bottom left-hand button, you click New. It's going to give you two choices. One of them says the easy setup. This uses some standard payroll items that are common. However, we're accountants. We need to do the custom setup because it's going to give you a lot more flexibility, and it's just really going to help you learn more about how these payroll items work. And obviously, the one that you want may not be in the easy setup. These are just some standards. So we'll do the custom setup. So the next thing it does is it asks you what type of payroll item you want to create. So just real quickly here, and this is basic, but I know a lot of you aren't familiar with this, wages. That's the one that will basically have the person's salary in it. They make $10,000 a month or whatever it is, okay? Addition, those are additions to the paycheck. These are deductions to the paycheck. That's what we're going to use for our health insurance, that the employee gets deducted. Company contribution, this is the one right here. Let me do this. This is the one where you get to have QuickBooks compute the employer's share of the health insurance, all right? And then the rest of these are taxes, okay? So I will say that there's more than one way to deal with health insurance, but I'm picking this method because it allows me to show you how to create two different payroll items. So the one for the deduction. So you click deduction, and then you roll through the screens. We name the deduction. I already have it created. So we're going to start with the health insurance employee. So I'm just double-clicked on it. So we named it Health Insurance Employee. And then let's see. All right. So then, you know what I realized? That I meant to do the preferences first, Hector, but I'll come back. I'll come back and do the preferences after. So then this is where it's paid. So it's paid to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Georgia. This is the identifying number. Since this is going to be deducted from the person's check, it's a liability to you. So as soon as it's deducted from the check, it goes to a liability account. QuickBooks has a liability account called Payroll Liabilities. It's in all the desktop version of QuickBooks. I don't like that. I want you to set up sub-accounts for the different payroll liabilities and point the appropriate payroll items to them. It'll make finding and fixing problems a lot easier later on. Okay, so there is where it's pointing to. This controls where it appears on the W-2, and you have a list of choices to pick from. This one is a 125 plan. It's deducted before tax. So I'll pick that one, and based on what you put in this screen, the next screen will already be completed. And basically this is saying that it's supposed to deduct health insurance before it computes all these taxes, and you can just review it to make sure that it's right and make any changes. But again, this screen will already be filled out if you've picked this one correctly. All right. Let's see. Is it based on a quantity? Wouldn't really be the case for health insurance. If it's something like perhaps the union dues is based on the number of hours or something like that, workers' comp, perhaps it's based on the quantity, this would not be. Now, there's a default rate. If the amount of health insurance that's being deducted is the same for every single employee, then you could put that there, but that's not the case. Everybody has their own separate dollar amount, so we'll leave that blank. Okay. Now, once you set that up, how do you tell QuickBooks that this particular employee needs health insurance deducted? Well, to do that, you go to the employee setup. So I'm going to go to the employees. There's many ways to get to it, but I'll just click on employees right here. And then I'll double click on this one. And if you go to payroll info, after you created the payroll items, this is where you assign them to employees and put the dollar amount. So see, here's my health insurance for employee. I want them to deduct $226. Now, I want to talk about this for a second because this is a little in the weeds, but this is a thing we get a lot of questions on. This person gets paid semi-monthly. Now, the health insurance, based on the health insurance company, the amount of health insurance, and it's always due monthly, is $452. Okay, well, that's monthly, but we pay semi-monthly. You can't get QuickBooks to auto deduct once a month. It's only once a paycheck, all right? So the only way to get it automatically deducted is if you basically convert whatever the monthly amount owed is to the number of paychecks, all right? So basically they get paid twice a month. So I took the total monthly bill and I divided it by 2. All right, and that's where I got to 26. Now, just to get in the weeds even a little further here as we're rounding home, what if this person was semi-weekly? If this person was semi-weekly, that means some months they get 3 checks and some months they get 2 checks. And so I can't really do a division to come up with a number to put here. So what you do is you take whatever the total health insurance would be for the whole year, divide it by 26 paychecks, and put it in there. And what that'll mean is that sometimes the amount withheld will be more than what you pay in, and sometimes it'll be less, but it'll all equal out at the end of the year. Now, if you don't like that, because you're like, look, what if the person quits in the middle of the year? I want to make it equal to what I pay every month. Then you're going to have to manually override the number when you get to the paycheck screen. All right, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So the other payroll item is for the company contribution, and that's the amount of money that the employer is paying. So that's a company contribution payroll item. I name it, put the name of the vendor, the ID, put it to the same liability account. Now, because this is an expense, this is the employer's portion of health insurance, so it's an expense that wants to know what expense account to point it to. So I'm pointing it here. And this is where it appears on the W-2. I picked health coverage cost, and therefore it'll appear in the right place according to the Affordable Health Care and DD. It'll have the right coding. And I think that's really the main pieces of that. And then, of course, you would set it up for that employee as well, where you put the dollar amount in. And I said that it was going to basically be $100. Here it is, $100 a paycheck. So basically what I've decided is I'm going to pay this person, I'm going to pay $200 a month towards their health insurance, and then they're paying the rest. And that's what I usually see. All right. So having said that, now let's go ahead and show you how to do a paycheck. All right. So, and this will be a good dovetail because I will be able to show the preferences here at the same time. So actually this works out really nicely. So that was kind of how to set things up. Now, when you run a payroll in QuickBooks Desktop, if you go to the employees, I'll just go to the employees right here, you will see there's a list of your employees, but there's also a tab called Payroll. And if you click it, you get to something that's called the Payroll Center. And this is basically where you run your payroll. This is where you pay your employees, this is where you pay the liabilities, and this is where you file the forms. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay an employee. All right? So I'm going to start a scheduled payroll. I didn't show you how to schedule a payroll, but you need to schedule. You need to tell QuickBooks when the payroll is due. Then you click Start Scheduled Payroll. You'll get a list of your employees. And I'm just going to open up this one because I want to make a point. Now, here's the employee. Do you see that there's the place here to put a class? All right? So if you have clients that either don't use the class feature at all of their employees, each employee only goes to one class, then this is fine. But we get people that call and say, you know what, I want to split my employees between classes. This happens in a lot of businesses. If your departments or divisions and you want to get a P&L by class, you want to split the payroll. This is the thing I was telling you that you could do in the desktop version of QuickBooks Payroll. But it doesn't look like you can do it here. Well, check this out. There is a preference. And again, preferences are little features here. And in the preferences, there's a section here for payroll preferences. And if I go to company, you'll see this thing here says entire paycheck. That's why I couldn't split it. So what I would suggest for your clients that want to split, click earnings item. When you click earnings item, I'll go right back here. I'll open up the same check. Oh my gosh, golly, now there's a column, and now I can split it. All right? So notice how the total pay is $2,500. I set that up when I set up the employee. Now this is a salaried employee, but now not only can I split up the class, but I can also put it to a particular job. Now, if I need it split, watch this. I'm going to use, this is a payroll item called salary. Now QuickBooks knows this person's supposed to get a gross of $2,500. If I want to split this between different classes or jobs, I type salary again, and it's not going to increase her pay. It's simply going to split it between the two. You see how that worked? And then I can put, well, this one I want to go to this class, and this one I want to go to this job. Now, if I don't want it to go 50-50, if I want to control how it's split, that's what the hours column is for. All right? So over here, I basically, even though this is a salaried employee, don't necessarily need her hours, although beginning in December, they are going to require us to at least report to many of the states what the hours are because of the new overtime laws. If I say, you know what, I want 10% of her salary to go to admin for this job, and I want the rest of it, 90% to go up here, I just express her paycheck in terms of hours. So 80 hours is 2 weeks, 10% of that is 8 hours. So if I put 8 here, and I put 72 here, do you see how it split it? Isn't that kind of cool? So it splits it so that 10% will go there, and the rest of it will go here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to create the paycheck, and then I'm going to go to a report that's a P&L by class. And I'm going to make the class, the pay period be 07/01/20, I think is what it was. 07/01/20. There we go. So do you see what it did? Do you see how it split the paycheck by class? Notice how it also split the payroll taxes by class. That's the other thing I wanted to point out. If you want the payroll taxes to be split in the same ratio as the paycheck, that's a preference. I'm going to go to the preferences. I'm going to go over here, and that's what this one is right here. Job costing, class, and item tracking for paycheck expenses. A lot of wording. I don't even like the way this sentence sounds, but basically if you check it, the taxes will be split. All right. So that is running the payroll. In order to pay the liabilities, we just go to pay liabilities. And one thing I will say, many people that are using QuickBooks Payroll, they get a bill in the mail from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and so they make the mistake of just going into the regular part of the program and just writing a check or entering a bill to Blue Cross Blue Shield instead of paying their payroll liabilities through this screen. Listen carefully. Any time you have anything being deducted or capital or company contribution, anything that's computed within the payroll part of QuickBooks, you have to pay that liability from this screen. All right. Otherwise, you'll get a bunch of stuff here that says it's owed that really isn't owed because you've already paid it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and check these two. I'll click View and Pay, pick the bank account, and that's how you pay it. Not a big deal. All right. So the only other thing I want to point out, we just got a couple of more minutes here and then I'll stop, is where you do the forms. So here's the forms, file forms right here. They have 941s. They'll file the state forms as well. They'll file the state withholding and state unemployment reports. And if we're getting close to the end of the year, W-2 right here. So I thought I would just pop this up and click Create Form so that you can see how to do this. It's a form. The form is right here. You are encouraged to review it. It's already kind of filled out. You just go through here, make sure all these things are correct. I mean, there's more to it than that, but again, we don't have a whole lot of time. It's in the training. But basically, it's showing you what the W-2s are going to look like. You just make sure that everything is cool, and then when you're done, you click Submit Form. Now, QuickBooks will allow you to print it, the W-2s. If you print it for employees, you print W-2s. Now, one thing that people get confused about, first of all, you can print on blank sheets of paper. So if you have QuickBooks Payroll, you can print the W-2s on blank sheets of paper. That is not true for 1099s. If you're wondering, you got to buy forms to print 1099s out of QuickBooks, but not W-2s. So you go in, you print the W-2s, then you go back and print the copy for the employer, and then you can, if you want to, print the W-2s and the W-3 and mail them in. However, you can also submit by e-file. Now, this data file isn't set up to do this, but if you sign up with EFTPS and put your code numbers, the PIN numbers in here, then that will turn this thing black, and then you'll be able to push on it and e-file your W-2s. We e-file W-2s, we e-file 941s. It's very easy. It's much better. And they'll e-file the state forms as well. We e-file our state forms. So we've got like 5 minutes left. So I think what I'm going to
Greg,
do...
let's go ahead, and can you put the slide to where to get more info about your payroll program?
Sure. So that was, I mean, again, it's a lot to cover. This is about 5 hours of learning. Dawn and I recorded it together. And this is where you can get it. Now, it's normally $199. I'm selling it to you guys for 48 hours at $149. Okay, so this is because I don't ever, it's kind of ridiculous to sell it this low, but I wanted to give you guys something that you could continue to learn with. So it's $149. There's the code to get it. If you would like to, we offer tech support here at QuickBooks Made Easy, not just for payroll, but for anything related to QuickBooks Desktop and QBO, and it's normally $299. I'm going to give it to you for only $100 more. So for $249, and I know that sounds too good to be true, but it really is. You can get tech support with us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.